You are tuned in to The T Side, a podcast where we talk total health, life lessons, and music. I'm your host, licensed therapist, doula, and music enthusiast, Tawnya D. Now let's get into it. You are listening to The T Side podcast, and I am your host, Tawnya D. Thank you so much for stopping by. Welcome to everyone that's new to the podcast, and welcome back to everyone else. If you like what you hear, I'd appreciate it if you share the information with someone else so they can enjoy it as well. And make sure you follow me on Instagram at T_side podcast for more great content. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different. This episode is a dual release in conjunction with Vanna, the host of the Hood Talks podcast. Her podcast provides a lot of really great education and support to the community, especially in the St. Louis area, while also giving the community a voice and a place to tell their stories in their own words. Last year, she reached out to me about partnering with her in her new series called The Hood Heals, where she brings different experts on to talk about therapy and the importance of mental health, particularly in communities of color. We both agreed that while people often talk about going to therapy and seeking mental health treatment, we don't really tell people how to do it. So we decided to start with the basics. I'm going to break the episodes down into a couple of different sections, but I will link the full episode in my show notes so you can watch the full video on her page. You can find it on Facebook or YouTube. But this week, we're just going to talk about the stigmas associated with therapy and some of the myths, as well as the different types of counselors. The theme song for this week is simply titled Therapy by Mary J. Blige. This was a song that she released back in 2014 on her album, The London Sessions. But before we get into today's episode, I want to thank BetterHelp for sponsoring this episode. As a therapist myself, you know that I'm a huge advocate for therapy, and we're living in challenging times, and even the strongest of us need a little help sometimes. Going to therapy doesn't make you crazy. I've even gone to therapy before, and it helped me deal with my anger and anxiety issues. Whether you're dealing with grief, depression, having issues in your relationship, past trauma, or just daily stress from work, talking to a therapist can be helpful. It's cool to talk to your friends, but they always have some type of bias because they know you, right? You want someone who can be objective. BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed therapist. You can start communicating in under 24 hours, so you don't have to wait weeks to get in to see someone. It's not a crisis line, and it's not self-help. It's professional counseling done securely online, and there's a broad range of expertise in the counselor network that may not necessarily be available in your local area. They have therapists available for clients starting at 13 years old, and they have counselors available worldwide. So for my international listeners, even you can log on to your account anytime and send a message to your therapist, and you get timely, thoughtful responses from them. You can schedule weekly video or phone sessions with them so you can avoid the uncomfortable waiting rooms. BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great therapeutic matches, so if you aren't feeling the provider that you're seeing, it's free to change to someone else who you are more comfortable with. It can also be more affordable than traditional counseling, and the best part is that financial aid is available. But don't take my word for it. Just visit their website and read some of the reviews for yourself. Visit betterhelp.com/tside. That's better, HELP.com/tside, and join over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. Now, you know I love a good discount, so I have a special offer for T-Side listeners. You get 10% off of your first month just by clicking on the link that'll be down in the description. BetterHelp wants you to start living a better life today, and so do I. So again, just click on the link down in the description of this episode to get started. Now, let's get into today's episode.
What is up, y'all? This is your girl, Vanna, and I'm super excited because today we have a dope show. This is actually our first. The Hood Talks podcast presents the Hood Hill segments. So I'm going to be bringing on a professional in the mental health space, someone who has done a lot of work in that space, who's going to be able to bring us some dope information, some tools, some resources on not only mental health, but also emotions, which y'all know everybody impacted by emotions, right? And it's probably a lot of stuff that we didn't get to learn when we was younger. So she's going to be breaking it all down for us. Not even just that, but I mean, she's coming to really bring out the basics around mental health. Okay, so I'm super excited to bring on this guest and her join me so we can have this conversation. Please help me welcome Miss Tawnya to the Hood Talks podcast.
Yay!
Hi.
Hello. I appreciate you having me today.
I'm super excited to be here with you. And to start this segment off, one thing that I'm grateful that you are going to break it down for us when we're talking
Yes.
about mental health. And I think once we get to break the basics down, building from there would be very impactful to the listeners.
Oh,
But
for sure.
we need to know the basics because some of us don't
So
even know
true.
that. And I know
Yeah.
I ain't the specialist. I ain't this ain't my specialty, baby. So I'm gonna be happy to provide the space for the professionals. Okay.
No problem. Because one, I always say to people, look, break it down to me like I'm a third grader. I'm not smarter than a fifth grader. I need third grade. Start real low.
Start low
So
and
so
build
I
up.
hope nobody feels offended if they feel like, okay, I got it. That's stupid. I know that. Everybody does not.
Everybody does not. Everybody is not the same. And so we have to make sure that we're providing as much information as we can to reach
Yep.
as many people as we can. And so
Absolutely.
that's what we're here to do. And that's how we're going to do it. We're going to start it off with the basics. So I'm giving you all the space and to give us to teach because I'm here to learn also in this space. To my listeners, y'all, hey, I'll be telling y'all, I'm right here with y'all in the thick of it. So I'm excited just to be able to hear and learn just as much as anybody else. So yes, come on. How do you want to start us off? I'm
Well,
excited.
I'll just start by telling you a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in St. Louis. I went to college at Southeast Missouri State University, came back and have been working in the St. Louis area for well over 20 years. I started with the state. I was a caseworker and moved up to what they call intensive in-home services, working with families for 20 hours a week when the kids were at risk of being taken out of the home. I've
Mm,
worked in at Cardinal Glennon, Youth in Need. I've done I did a good bulk of my time at the YWCA, the Women's Resource Center, as a sexual assault therapist. We did groups in the prison, community education, as well as the sexual assault response team. So sometimes I would go out to the hospitals when rape survivors came in, as well as I've done so much I can't even keep up. Then I went to the managed care side, insurance. I did uh, employee assistance counseling
mm,
or setting people up. I worked in after hours, so people calling in just to talk, people calling in to get set up with a counselor, a
mm.
variety of different things. And
You went all around this
I was
space.
gonna say, and then yeah, I'm
You touch
still on that side.
children. You touch
Yeah,
adults. So you sexual abuse survivors. You touch several different.
everybody,
Yeah,
everything. So
yeah. So that means who more well equipped to give us the basics than you,
yeah,
huh?
so when I talk to people, I can relate to where they are
Mm.
because people are all over the place. And then last October, I just celebrated 1 year. I started the T Side podcast.
Yeah, shout out to you for that one.
Yes, I'm still getting my courage up to do that. I'm not good at public speaking, so doing
Yeah.
this is even, a step outside of my comfort zone as the expert.
I feel you. It is definitely yeah, that's kind of what my story is too. I'd be like, I am not a public speaker. Don't really like doing it. But sometimes you just have to step into those lanes because you're trying to provide something and that's kind of where I am. So
And that's how you grow.
that's how you grow. Stepping out and just
Yep.
putting
Learn
yourself
as you
out there. Yep, learn as you go. And as you have a podcast, like you said, that it's just definitely learn as you go.
Absolutely. So, yeah, we just going to talk about the basics because again, I've worked with a lot of different people at a lot of different levels. So, these are some of the things that I find on a regular basis, and I will just start with the types of therapists.
The types of
because,
symptoms, yes. Because
people
that's
would call and say, I want to get set up with a psychiatrist. But as I talk, they were like, no, I don't want medication. Well, that's what a psychiatrist does. So I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I've had people call in and say, well, I don't want a social worker. They don't know what they're doing. Okay. I mean, they don't know my credentials. So that's fine. I'm going to meet you where you at. But basically, they don't really know the difference. So
mm-hmm.
you have a psychiatrist and a psychologist. A psychiatrist has a medical degree, they went to medical school. And
Okay.
so they can write prescriptions, diagnose, and monitor for side effects of medications and interactions with medications. A psychologist has a doctorate degree.
Mm-hmm.
So they might be Dr. Jones, but it's more on the psychological educational side. They can do some testing when kids need a psychological evaluation.
Yeah.
They can do that. You find a lot of them in schools. They can do therapy as well as testing.
Okay. So I didn't even know that. Okay.
Yeah. And a counselor and a social worker, I've always worked in conjunction with both alongside counselors. So a LPC, which is a licensed professional counselor,
Mm-hmm.
and like myself, a LCSW, a licensed clinical social worker, because social workers, to be honest, they run a long gamut. So
Yeah, they
they
do.
do a lot of different things. You
They
can
can.
find social workers a lot of times as the case managers in the hospital,
Mm-hmm.
doing discharge and doing intake, different things like that. Whether it's on the abuse side with little ones or elderly, you're trying to get services set up for adults,
Yep.
they can do that as well. But in a counseling setting, it's more so you have to have a master's degree in
Hmm.
counseling or social work, and then like so many hours. Like for myself, I had to have 3,000 additional supervised hours in order to get licensed, and every 2 years I have to do 30 hours of continuing education to keep my license.
Okay, so
So
that's not specifically around mental health, though, is it? Or yes?
yeah,
Oh, okay.
and it's you can pick what you want, because to be honest, a counselor and social workers, they can specialize in different things. Like I did rape crisis counseling and groups. That's a specialty, you
Okay.
know, because everybody's not comfortable with everything. And that's part of the training you get, is figuring out what are you comfortable with, what are you not comfortable with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I am a sexual assault survivor. I will not, and I have had to before, and I quickly realized I do not, will not, cannot work with perpetrators. But they
Mm.
have therapists that are in the prisons that work with perpetrators.
Mm.
It's
And that's,
something for everybody.
yeah, because I feel you on that. I think that could be triggering in a sense if you
Exactly.
were working with them. That definitely could be triggering. But there's someone that specializes in that space, and that's
Yeah,
interesting. But I guess they need therapy too, right?
exactly. Clearly. But basically, you
Clearly.
have people who work with kids. Like I've always loved working with younger people.
Mm-hmm.
There are people, they what's called gerontology. They work with older people.
Hmm.
So like
Yeah, it's
hospice
like
nurses
just
are
like doctors in a sense who have
exactly
those specialties that they might dive into. You have the basics,
right.
and then they go into those, like lanes. You have the blood doctors, the foot doctors, the dentists. So,
Exactly.
yeah. So it's in that similar space.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
And
that's why people always feel like I'll just talk to my friend. You can,
right, but
but they're not trained to do what we do. They're like, well, anybody can do that. That's because we're good at what we do. We
yeah.
make it look easy.
It
It's not.
makes it look easy.
Right.
Exactly. I cannot even imagine being a counselor and having to take in people's heaviness,
Yeah.
and still stay professional at the same time, because you have to. It's a
Yeah.
line you have to make sure that you don't cross.
And I will say, it's a saying, it's like every good therapist has a therapist.
That part.
So you can go off and talk to your friends and tell them about what so and so said. We are bound by confidentiality.
Yeah.
We
Yep.
can't go home and be like, honey, let me tell you,
And
so
that
and so
part.
did.
That part. So that's why everybody be like, my business out here in the streets, because you telling it to the wrong people. You need to go to
Hello.
somebody that can't tell your business.
Right. You said it. I agree. That's what I'm saying. So,
Like, your business out here because you telling the wrong folks. They ain't got no lie telling them they can't tell your business.
right.
They ready to go. Look, this is the Hood Talks podcast. We keep it real and raw. But yes,
Okay.
they ready to go tell your folks. And that's why, because you're going to them instead of going to a therapist. And then we talk
Right.
about how much it costs, which I understand. There is a lot right now around the cost of mental health and that space of therapists and counselors and things like that. So it's really about like how, uplifting those services that are some free services that people can
Quite a
tap into.
few. Quite a
Yeah.
few.
But then it's also about making sure that we're prioritizing this too, and how important it really is.
Right. Yeah.
So I think that's some nuggets and stuff to drop out there as we continue this conversation. But yeah,
Oh, for sure.
like let's make sure that we are also making sure that this is priority, and we're putting whatever we need to put into that bucket when it comes to funds and money, or tapping
Yeah.
into the free resources, because they're out there.
Oh, yeah. Quite a few.
Yes, I know some people offer sliding scales and things like that. There are
Hmm.
some nonprofit organizations that are specifically around those spaces.
Yeah. And
So
like I said, I did EAP, which is Employee Assistance Program. So honestly, most jobs have that now where you can get a certain number of sessions at no additional cost. It's
right.
not through your insurance, it's not through the health plan. Your employer does not know that you're going to therapy.
Oh
They
yes.
they get stats on the demographics, like it how many men, how many women, the age range
Mhm.
of people who are utilizing the services to make sure they're providing the best services.
Mhm.
But they don't know who's going to counseling and what they're going for.
Right.
So I've seen up to 20, very few companies offer free sessions. Usually it's 1 to 3, 1 to 5, or 8.
Wow.
And it's for all household members and dependents.
Mm.
So Papa
That's
John's
it.
even has employee assistance benefits.
So people really need to really tap in. There's no,
Yeah,
in a sense, it's not really any excuses, but
exactly.
it's no excuses.
So you always have to make sure when you're looking for therapy, find the person that's a good fit for you.
Yeah.
Because truth be told, everybody isn't for everybody.
That part.
Because but first, you can't put it on the therapist. You have to know what you want and what your style is. Because some people say, all they did, I need to find somebody else because all they did was talk. Some people say they didn't even say anything. So you have to know what you want. Do you want somebody to give you feedback? Do you want somebody to more so listen to what you're saying?
Mm,
Because people go to therapy for different things.
yeah.
And you
That's
don't have to go to therapy for major crises in your life.
You
Possibly
don't?
you're just at a age, at a space, you want to change careers and you need somebody to really bounce it off of. You can go to therapy for a few sessions and
Mm,
then you're able to process all of that out because a good therapist is not going to tell you what to do.
that part. That's not what they're there for anyway.
A good therapist is going to help you process your own thoughts and feelings and how to work through it. So if you don't have those emotions and the vocabulary, that's what they're going to do. They're going to help you put words to how you're feeling so you can take that back to your family or to your situation
And
and go from there.
okay, let me say this. And we're gonna start wrapping it up. It is okay not to be okay. Like it's okay to be that. It's
Yeah.
okay to be in that space. It's okay to feel like you're tired, you're exhausted, depression, all of those things. It's okay to go through that. Let's not stick in it. The anger, all of these emotions, let's not stay in them. That's the part. Let's do the
Right.
work to come up out of them and to push forward. And you may again have a setback. You might get back to that space, but again, it's about moving forward and continue to do the work to continue to grow and flourish. We don't have to stay in those spaces because that's where it's hindering us. If we continue to stay, if I'm
Mhm.
always mad, no one wants to be around someone that's always angry.
Right.
bitter. No one wants to be around somebody that's always bitter.
Right.
Yeah,
Because it will show, even if you're not expressing how you feel, the whole body language thing, people, and then you like, nobody even invited me to the party because they don't want that. They can't handle that negative energy.
yes, that part. That part.
Yeah.
And when you are a person that feels off energy and, in your spirituality, you be like, look, I ain't got it. I ain't got the
Right.
time, the energy myself, the space
Right.
to provide anything to and I wish you well. And then people, like you
Right.
said, you never know what people are doing themselves. Because one thing I love to say, I keep it real and raw and I'm real transparent, is I'm doing the work. I'm still in the process of doing work. I've been really consistent with therapy and my counseling these last several years, but it's also, like I've had setbacks. I've had moments where I'm like, okay, did it really work? And I had to remind myself, yes, I had to remind myself about growth. I had to look back and be like, you remember how you used to handle it? Look how you handle it now. So
Yeah.
yeah, you have to take
Absolutely.
those moments and sit
See, I'm
back.
proud of you. You are growing.
Girl, you want to like y'all be. I ain't gonna spill my tea. Not on the first episode, y'all. I ain't gonna spill my tea on the first
Oh.
episode. But yeah, no, I look back and I really have to look at myself and be like you sat here and said at the beginning, sitting here in this space and being able to put myself out here and have these discussions and build this platform. I wouldn't have been able to do that 3 or 4 years ago. I
Right.
had a lot of things within myself. I had to really come to self-love. I ain't, again, transparent, self-love and
Mm-hmm.
really uplifting, how I care about myself and things like that. So yeah, I'm doing the work and I hope to help others do their work.
And you know what? That's the most important thing. And that's why I love the Hood Talk podcast, because you bring out, you bring out the hood that people feel like they not getting help. They don't feel like, they don't need help. They not doing anything. They just want to be in the hood. You can be hood and go to therapy,
Yes, you can. I call it
because
hood
you can
healing.
find a hood therapist.
Yes, you can. They out here. They out here.
That
They
would
are
be
out
me.
here. That's me. Yeah, I'm out here.
Yeah.
Come tap in, y'all. Come tap in. Right.
Yeah.
It's about having the representation for everyone. And what
Yeah.
not even just that you can get a therapist in that space, but you can be one. Tap in.
Yeah.
Tap in, because that's another one that I want to uplift, is that again, let's get into these spaces so we can be providing these spaces for each other. So yeah, not only that you can get one, but you can be one. That's also
Yeah.
important. It doesn't matter where you have been or what has happened to you. You
Yeah.
still can do whatever you put your mind to do, and
Yeah.
help in my space and in my mind, help us, because that's what you're
Yeah.
doing. When we need you, we need therapists, counselors, social workers, all of that, just like you. Um,
Yeah.
so I appreciate what you do and how you've
Well,
done
thank
it.
you.
You keeping it real and raw. Again, that's what's up. We need those. We need them. We need us.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I think we covered a lot of the basics in a sense. Is there
Yeah.
anything else you think we need to touch on that's important before we close out?
No, just, I know it was a lot of information. If people have questions or anything like that, feel free.
I was just gonna
We
say,
can
how can
we
the
can
people
get
tap
all
into
that.
you? Because if I'm like, oh, I like her, I want services, I want to be able to, tap into her. How can I do that?
I don't do therapy individually at this time, but there are a lot in the St. Louis area, and there's a few sites that people can go to. If you don't go through your employee assistance program or through your local, county agency to look for services, you can go to Therapy for Black Girls. I love Therapy for Black Girls. She has a podcast, Dr. Joy,
Shout out to her.
but that site has a whole directory of therapists. And I've looked just to see what comes up. Probably 5 that I know personally. I just typed in St. Louis, and
Oh,
5 that I knew, but it was 5
okay.
pages of therapists in St. Louis. And they were all women of color, because it's Therapy for Black Girls.
And come to
Therapyforblackgirls.com. There's, what is it called? Let me see. It is therapyforblackmen.org. They have a site for men. You can look on there for a therapist, and just psychologytoday.com. You can type in the area you want. You can look for specialties like what insurance do they take,
Okay.
what do they specialize in, and even if you call somewhere to get set up with a therapist, just let them know you're looking for somebody to deal with this, because you want somebody who specializes in whatever it is you have going on, because everybody is not good as a grief therapist. A lot of people don't deal with trauma and PTSD. So, there are some that deal specifically with substance abuse. So you just have to let them know what you're looking for. And I will say, if you call a therapist, you can ask questions to get a feel for them before you go. They're not going to do a full interview, but how long are the sessions going to be? Are they virtual or in person? And just to get an idea of their style, you can ask them maybe what is your style of therapy.
And that is so important to know. I think again, when people talk about therapy, they feel like they're limited in a sense. It's kind of like with us and providers anyway, in doctors' offices and all that, like especially with women and pregnancy,
Yeah.
do the world.
Yeah.
This is a whole nother space, but I think we don't shop around enough. We don't feel like we are empowered enough to ask questions. We're not empowered enough to feel like we can get what we want. And I think that is what's causing us to not tap in. And I think that is what we have to shed that mindset and go in. Like you said, ask questions. Make sure you know what you want. Be demanding. Like, hey, I want someone that can do this and that and that. If they can't provide that, that's fine. That's okay.
Right.
That's not the therapist or the person for you. Move on, find someone else, and just keep pushing it till you find who's the fit and who helps or gives you what you need. It's about you, caring for you.
Yep. And advocate for yourself.
Yep. Well, all right, y'all. That's it, y'all. That's it. But thank you, Miss Tawnya, for starting us off, giving us.
Thank you for having me.
No, I appreciate you.
Hopefully, I provided some information that was helpful for somebody today.
Yes, it was for me.
Thank you for listening to the T-Side Podcast. Be sure to follow me on your favorite listening platform so you get notified when new episodes come out. You can also connect with me on social media at T_Side Podcast on Instagram and Twitter, as well as on Facebook at the T-Side Podcast. You can also head over to the website, thetsidepodcast.com, where you can leave a comment, send me an email, or even a voicemail. I look forward to hearing from you.